As previously promised, the comparator video is here. Many people are intimidated by this little thing, and I'm not going to say they're in the wrong. Comparators have a lot going on with them, which can be confusing for a newcomer trying to figure things out. Unfortunately, a number of these uses are incredibly useful, so all these people being confused about this thing don't have access to an incredibly useful tool in the Redstone toolkit. I'm here to try to help with that, at least a little bit. Before going over all the confusing stuff, though, we can start with something pretty easy, getting a comparator. They can most easily be crafted by using 3 redstone torches, 3 blocks of stone, and a piece of nether quartz. Otherwise, you can collect a fair amount of them from the central building of most ancient cities. This building can have 3 different layouts, with each giving a different number of comparators, the least being 2 and the most being 9. With that out of the way, though, it's time to talk about how these things work. Comparators are able to take in signals from their back and sides and process them into a single output. The inputs can be split into the main input taken from the back and the secondary input taken from whichever side has a higher signal strength. For example, this comparator has inputs coming in from both sides and the back. The left input has a signal strength of 13, and the right input has a signal strength of 15. Because the right input is higher than the left input, the comparator will use the right input as the secondary input. The main input always comes from the back. The sides are a little picky about where the signal is coming from, though, because they'll only respond to power dust, repeaters, and comparators, as well as redstone blocks. The wiki also says they can respond to observers in specific scenarios, but I don't know what that means, and I couldn't get anything to happen in my limited testing, so I wouldn't count on it too much. Any missing signals will be treated the same as if it had a signal strength of 0. The output of a comparator will come out of its front. Alongside the normal signal things of powering redstone dust and interacting with all the other stuff, this output is also able to strongly power opaque blocks to a signal strength equal to its output. Whenever it's outputting a signal higher than 0, the 2 back torches will be on just as an indicator that it's outputting something. Comparators have a delay of 1 redstone tick that will be applied whenever it updates its output, whether it's because of a changing main input or a secondary input. The first way a comparator can decide what to output is to compare the main and secondary inputs, as the name may tell you. This is what it'll do if the front torch is off. Pretty simply, if the main input signal strength is greater than or equal to the secondary inputs, the output will be equal to the main input. If the secondary input instead has the higher signal strength, then the output will be 0. If you right-click the comparator, the torch on the front should turn on, indicating it has changed mode and is going to do something else now. Instead of comparing the main and secondary inputs, it'll now subtract them. More specifically, it will output a signal strength equal to the main input's strength minus the secondary input's strength. If this would result in a negative number, it just outputs 0 instead. No negatives allowed. As a result of either of these behaviors, when a comparator is getting no side inputs, its output will always be equal to its input, allowing it to carry a signal at the same strength. This can be used in combination with its delay to make a simple pulse extender, where a signal goes in is reduced by 1 anytime it goes around a bend, and eventually runs out after some time passes. I'd argue that the main functionality of a comparator is not any of that, though. In my opinion, its main function is the fact that it's able to treat some blocks placed behind it as a main signal instead of an actual redstone signal. The blocks that can be used are pretty varied, but the comparator always measures something about them. To summarize quickly, in case you don't want to listen to me list everything off, it generally measures how full things are in one way or another. It is able to measure these blocks through a single opaque block, but not if that block is powered to a signal strength of 15. In that case, it'll always output a 15 no matter what the block it's supposed to be reading actually has. That's all there is to note about comparators, so if the specifics are too boring for you and you don't want to listen to me go through everything here, feel free to click off the video and have fun building some redstone. Otherwise, thanks for sticking around and let's get started. Most of the containers being chests, trap chests, barrels, shulker boxes, double chests, double trap chests, furnaces, blast furnaces, smokers, brewing stands, dispensers, droppers, hoppers, decorated pots, minecarts with chests, and minecarts with hoppers are all read by a comparator based on how full their inventory is, with more full meaning more signal strength. More specifically, it can be deduced by this equation. If you're scared of math, basically signal strength is based on number of items and the maximum capacity of the specific container you're using. Lecterns are based on the progress through the book that the lectern is holding. It can be found through this equation. Again, if you're scared of math, if you're farther through the book, it'll output a higher signal strength. Creaking hearts can be read by a comparator, and it is based on the distance between the creaking heart and the creaking assigned to that creaking heart, with small distances having a higher signal strength than large distances. It is based on this equation. Yeah, that's just what I said. Small distance, high signal. Respawn anchors have an output based on the current charge level. With this equation, basically, it goes from 0 to 3, 7, 11, and 15 with each piece of glowstone you put in. Beehives and bee nests are based on the honey level currently in there, with 1 strength being added for each level, up to a maximum of 5. A cake can be read, which would be based on the number of remaining slices. It gives 2 signal strength for each slice left, and with 7 slices, that's a maximum of 14. Cauldrons are based on the fluid height in there, with 1 strength being added for each layer of either water or snow, and 3 for a total of 3 if it's full. Lava skips the whole layering process the other 2 fluids go through, and will immediately go to full, which does act the same. It's also 3. Composters are based on how full they are, with a single point of signal strength being added for each layer in there, as well as an extra one if the bone meal on top has formed. So it fills up to 7, and then after about a second, a layer of bone meal will form on top of that, and will total up to 8. Crafters would go with the rest of the containers, but they like to be weird. Instead of being based on how full they are, it's based on how many slots are occupied or disabled. It gives 1 signal strength for each slot that matches either of these for a maximum of 9. Copper bulbs are just based on if it's on or not, with outputting 15 for on, 0 for off. End portal frames are similar, just based on whether it has an eye, 15 if yes, 0 if no. Item frames and glow item frames are based on the rotation of the item inside. Only gives a signal strength if there's an item in there, with it starting at 1 and going up every time you rotate it until it hits 8, and then it resets back to 1 with another rotation. This works visually normally for most items. The only ones that are a bit weird are maps, specifically filled maps. Because they're square and rotate in increments of 90 degrees, you would think that their redstone output would be a bit different to reflect this, but no, they do still function based on the same cycle. They start at 1 and each rotation pops it up 1 until it gets to 8 and then it resets. So this means multiple different redstone signals can be pulled from a single visual state for the map to be in. Like pointing up can either be 1 or 5, depending on if it's your first or second spin around. Chiseled bookshelves are based on the last slot interacted with, numbered top left to bottom right. This gives a maximum of 6. Jukeboxes are based on which disc is playing, 0 if no disc is playing, and these signals for if a disc is playing. And finally, skulk sensors are based on the type of sound made. I'm not going to go over what types everything is, right here at least, but if I make a skulk sensor video in the future, I'll be sure to cover it over there. Finally, command blocks have an output based on the number of successes of the last command run. It gives a signal strength of 1 for each success, going up to a maximum of 15. This isn't anything related to the command block, the maximum. That's just because the general max for redstone is 15. I don't totally understand what the number of successes correlates to. I did some simple testing and it's not like the number of targets hit by a command or anything. So I'm not totally sure on that, but that's what the wiki says, so I won't question it too much if I don't totally understand. And that should be it for comparators. I know these things can be a little confusing. I'm glad you stuck with me till the end. Hopefully you understand it a little better. Hopefully I explained it well enough. If I didn't, I apologize. Leave any questions you have for me in the comments. I'll try to answer them as best I can in text form instead of speaking form. And since the video is over, you can have fun building with redstone, and you're allowed to have slightly more fun than the people who clicked off because you stuck with me and for some reason listened to me list all this. But yeah, have fun.